What's up, YouTube fam? Today is one of those days where you just have to brace yourself, right? You can't panic, you can't get worried, you can't become depressed. You literally just have to brace what is going on and dealing with it, right? Dealing with the storm, because this is the world of investing, this is the world of trading, of speculating, and ultimately, if you're going to sell options, if you're going to get involved in any of this, you have to be prepared for days like this. Now, the cool part, right, and this is why I don't mind days like this, is because you're only going to go down when the entire market is down, right? So obviously, if we pull up the SPY or we pull up the NASDAQ, it's a huge red candle, right? Obviously, when you look at every individual stock, they all are getting hit as well, but a lot of them are getting hit much worse than the NASDAQ. And on top of that, obviously, if you pull up the leveraged ETFs, those are obviously getting destroyed as well. As you can see, I removed Connell from my watch list because that stock has just not been friendly to me. It has been the big reason of not all of our losses, but a lot of our losses. And also, as bad as it was, we did get out at, I think it was $34. So we actually ended up saving ourselves, like $800 to $1,000 by finally pulling the trigger. But obviously, it doesn't matter what you would have been in. You would have gotten beat up. But, Connell happened to get beat up the worst of really any stock that I can see. And ultimately, that's just what happens when you're playing with these leveraged ETFs, especially on something like Coinbase, which is extremely volatile, down 7%, 8%. Connell, is down 16% in a day. And it's a scary day, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? This isn't fun. No matter what name you're looking at is destroyed. But that's the good way to look at it, right? Is you are getting a buying opportunity on names that you would want to buy. And this is the time, right? The bear market, as Warren Buffett says, when the bear market comes, you'll see who is swimming naked. Days like today, you'll find out who is swimming naked, right? And obviously, for someone like myself who's taking cash secured puts and covered calls on something like TQQQ, I do not consider that swimming naked at all, right? Like, obviously, if you purchased a naked call on HIMS, which tons of people did, and they thought they were getting rich, right? This is why it's stocks like HIMS that flew up like this. That's kind of the telltale that we're in for something bad happening, right? And honestly, every single stock eventually started to look bearish. I didn't have the magic crystal ball. I lost my fair share of money on this, and guess what? I'm down a lot, right? This is probably the worst day since we started. We finally have broken back into the negative, and I'll say this, right? I cannot, give credit to my strategies completely for a lot of these losses. A lot of these losses are from me doing things that don't align with the strategy, and that's why obviously I reset the entire account back to TQQQ. And listen, these positions are obviously all beat up. You could see these puts that I sold are up hundreds of percents, but that's the beautiful part about selling options, right? Is you are rolling with time. So obviously by next week, because these are all next week, if there is a retracement or if it slows down, then we will catch up. If it continues down, then it is what it is, right? We'll brace it. Obviously, we have this covered call that happens to be up, nicely. But of course, the leap that we bought to, sell the covered call is finally in the negative when it was up, $400, $500. But, it is a 2027 leap, and ultimately the break even is 102, which obviously, it is high. It is all-time highs. But I do anticipate that by 2027, we would be at all-time highs. Now, I obviously don't even intend on holding this that long, but, I don't look at it as such a terrible play. Obviously, if we went into a full-on bear market and, this became basically worthless, then it is what it is, right? Then the couple $1,000s would be gone. We are selling covered calls against it, so, I wouldn't anticipate losing it all even in that case. But regardless, I really don't anticipate losing this entire position. Like, I just don't see TQQQ going into this full-on bear market. And again, even if it does, being that we could just keep selling covered calls against it, that would be my plan, how I would manage it, and ultimately just riding the waves, right? Obviously, majority of my money in this account is now cash secured puts on TQQQ. We have 3 separate ones open. At this point, truthfully, the only 2 things I'm even going to consider selling options on are probably QQQQ and BitX, because ultimately, individual stocks, it's just getting to be a little too crazy, right? Like, I was looking at XYZ. I'm pretty sure I spoke about XYZ on this channel. I know I was in the position for a day or two, but I just was looking at the chart and it just did not give me good vibes. And that's the thing. It's funny because, I can be down and depressed about the losses I absorbed, right? But there's also a lot of losses I missed out on just between getting out of Connell at 34. I probably should have been out of it by 40, but you know what? I ended up holding it a little longer, but at least I prevented myself from holding it even longer than that. And XYZ, I was in this position and I just realized that I didn't think we were ready to start actually heading up yet. I saw something like this happening during earnings, so I didn't short it, right? I'm not going to sit here and take that credit, but I did close the position and prevent, dealing with this. So, yes, the losses sting, but there are losses that we actually were able to mitigate, and I'm choosing to look at that instead, right? Instead of being depressed, I'm choosing to look at the fact that I was actually able to mitigate multiple big losses, because it could have been much worse. So, some of the gambles and losses we've taken on this channel to still be at roughly break even, right? Being down $100 is break even at this point, right? We've been up 5,000, we've been down 4,000. To be at break even after all of the things we've done is actually a blessing. And I'll tell you this, if you were trading options where you were buying naked calls and naked puts with 30 grand and you were doing some of the things I've been doing, you would have lost all of your money by now. So, that's why I love selling options. When people comment saying, oh, selling options is risky, or selling cash secured puts on, the stocks I'm selling is one of the riskiest things. I just don't see it, right? Because at the end of the day, selling puts is collecting premium, getting a lower entry. And yes, TQQQ is volatile, but again, it's not a meme coin, right? It's not a penny stock. It's still something that's been around for 15 years, has came back to highs. It's like I would rather take the volatility with the higher premiums and be able to deal with days like today where, yes, it is down a lot, compared to even a lot of individual stocks. It might even be down a little bit, more. But guess what? When it's bullish, it also goes up a very good amount. And ultimately, like I said, collecting premium is your ticket to offsetting the decay, right? Now, I will say this, looking at this chart, it does concern me because ultimately, when you look at this top pattern, right, and then you look at this, it's basically doing the exact same thing, right? We came up, ultimately came back, right? Now, the only difference here is it made this bottom and then made a higher low. Here, it made this bottom and then made a lower low. So that's the only difference I can spot, is that we are making higher lows compared to here. So listen, I'm hoping that it's not going to be the same because, again, if you zoom in even more, right, and you look at this top and then this top, right, it looks very similar. So this could literally be the top of the market and a start of a bear market. I don't want to see it. And ultimately, this is just the TQQQ. So if we look at the real NASDAQ, it doesn't necessarily look the same. So, I don't want you to take that technical analysis on TQQQ as literal because ultimately the real NASDAQ, as you can see, it created completely new highs. And that's where the decay comes in, right? When you see the decay live, it's the same time frame, November, December of 2021, right? Again, if you pull up US 100, November, December of 2021, the fact that the NASDAQ has rallied, 30% past this, while TQQQ is below it, that's where the decay comes in. And that's ultimately why selling premiums and why you have to be selling options basically full time on TQQQ, because that's the only way you're going to make up for the decay. Otherwise, yeah, you would be better off buying and holding the NASDAQ. Now, obviously, what gets us so interested in TQQQ is the fact that it's cheaper, right? To sell options on the NASDAQ or QQQQ, you would need 50 plus thousand. With this, you only need 8,000. If it keeps going, you'll need less, right? Which, that's the benefit. And ultimately, yeah, the cool part about TQQQ is that, again, I'm not really worried about it recovering, right? Like, it's been around since 2010. You could look at the chart since the beginning. It really has been, a parabolic rise. Now, obviously, again, this part right here, how it didn't create new highs, or it did create new highs, but barely, compared to NASDAQ, which has gone up 30%. It's like, let's see. This went up 10% from its all-time highs. But ultimately, again, it doesn't necessarily it doesn't scare me, right? And to sit here and say there's no risk, of course there's risk, right? That's why we're dealing with losses. That's why we're dealing with red days. But, you kind of have to just figure out your own degree of risk, right? For me, I've gone through a lot, just even on this channel, just the positions we've taken, right? I put in the Discord how much I lost on the Connell position. It wasn't pretty, right? Let's see. Here you go. So, we bought for 8,700, sold it for 68. We lost, what is that, $2,000, right? So it is what it is. I think I made back 200 or 300 in premium. So maybe I lost 1600, That wiped out the whole week's worth of gains. And listen, that was the risk I was willing to take. I was up a lot last week and I was really trying to press it. And it just is what it is. It's a lesson I learned. And at this point, it burnt me out, right? It put me in a position where I just want to stick to a strategy that I believe in, right? And obviously, if the NASDAQ does go into an all-on bear market, then any of the stocks that I would have been selling puts on will be crashing as well. So, at this point, the strategies I'm running, I know will work. As long as it's not, listen, if it's doing something like this, then even if it is coming down like this, then selling cash secured puts will still work itself out. Because I would keep rolling. I'll roll the NASDAQ forever. I'll roll TQQQ forever. And, that's what makes it work, because it'll always bounce compared to, even Alibaba, right, which has obviously been a stock that's been flying lately. It really did bear market out for years, right? Like it came out November 20 October of 2020 is when it topped, and it only started moving up again literally a week or two ago, right? It's just been parabolic. That to me is a lot less sustainable for selling options than this, where yes, okay, it moved down quick, but it also moved back up very quick, right? And if you were selling puts that whole way down, it would not have taken you long before the puts that you're selling would have became worthless and you would have had all your money back. So yeah, it might have been a rough year, maybe even a rough 2 years, but ultimately, I just don't think the losses would have been even close to had you been doing majority of things truthfully, right? Whether it would have been holding crypto, holding majority of these other stocks, selling options on all these other stocks. And that's what makes it so difficult. That's what makes this game so difficult, right? Is you genuinely don't know which stock is going to go into a bear market, which one's going to go into a bull market. Because even stocks that are good financially, right? Even stocks that are good companies can go into these multiple year bear markets, right? So the NASDAQ, the SPY, it's never going to really be a multiple year, 1 to 2 years max, compared to an individual stock. It could be 4 years, it could be even 20 years, So for me, I'm picking my poison with something like TQQQ. And like I said, if I want to start doing crypto, it would be BitX, because, just watching Coinbase fall so much more than Bitcoin and crypto, it was driving me nuts. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's not an easy day. It's not an easy week. If you're struggling, if you're going through pain, I'm hoping this video will bring you some peace. I'm hoping that you can feel like I'm there for you and you're not alone, because we will get through this, I promise. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to comment. I'm sure you didn't enjoy losing and enjoying watching me lose, but if you feel like you've gotten value, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.